With week 2 in the books for the college football season, I want to talk biggest takeaways. I'll start off with my biggest takeaway. I think it's the biggest takeaway I briefly mentioned in the last segment, but there's a lot of bad teams. Like, there are a lot of teams, and I'm not saying bad, but like when you're talking about a 12-team playoff right here, I was kind of checking teams off the list because, right, LSU's already lost a game as an LSU. I'm kind of checking teams off the list. All right, they're not good enough to be in the top of that. I started checking teams off the list after this week. I'm like,
every single team other than Georgia, Texas, Ohio State has looked beatable.
Notre Dame lost. Oklahoma
Bama,
State
Oregon,
probably got
Penn
outgained
State,
by
Michigan.
Penn State was in a game with Bowling Green.
Oregon
got taken to the wire with Boise State. I mean, you can throw USC in the teams that has kind of looked really good to this point of the season. But you're really talking about 5 or 6 teams. You're like, okay, Bama struggled with USF. I mean, nearly almost lost the game. It had a big fourth quarter and everything.
That final score in Bama is going to be one of the most deceitful things in recent memory. When we look back in 6 weeks and they go, that game felt a lot closer. It was way closer than that.
They had a legitimate chance.
They almost, yeah.
So I started crossing teams off the list. I'm like, bro. I mean, listen, Michigan's ranked 17th in the AP poll. That's 5 points or 5 spots outside of a college football playoff, and they're only there because everyone kind of sucked. I mean, Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois. Oregon is currently ranked number 9th. They struggled with Idaho, and then they almost lose to Boise State. I mean, Alabama, dude, you can go on and on. Oklahoma State outgained by 300 yards against Arkansas. They made Arkansas look like one of the best.
Lost that game.
You can't believe it. Tulane, if it's not for an offensive pass interference that was absolutely egregious, I don't know if you watched that game, an egregious offensive pass interference. Tulane goes to overtime, maybe goes for 2 in the final seconds of that game to beat Kansas State. I mean, there were so many bad performances by teams that were ranked in the top 15, 20. That I'm looking at a 12-team playoff. I'm like, bro, there's going to be a lot of questionable teams. So if you're one of those questionable teams that maybe got a loss to Northern Illinois, maybe got a loss to USC, maybe struggle, don't feel too bad because there's a lot of us, and it's a long season. A couple of those teams are going to figure it out as the season goes.
And you're looking at this Georgia schedule, and Georgia obviously is the top dog right now. Some people in Austin might be thinking they're the best team, and to this point, they have the best win of the season, in my opinion. But Georgia, you go look at, they've got to play the number 2. All right. Yeah. So the number 2, the number 4, the number 5, and the number 6, and then the number 17, because I think Tennessee jumped all the way up. That is, I mean, they're probably going to, obviously I think Georgia's the best team in college football. Carson Beck and Bobo certainly haven't hit their stride, but that defense is reminiscent of that 2021 defense. This Georgia Bulldogs team is absolutely freaking for real. But they still are probably they can't win all of those. Everybody is going to come out of this. The only team I can actually see right now is maybe Ohio State. Because they just don't have to. Oregon is worse than we all thought. Penn State really isn't what we thought they were. USC, I don't think
can beat Georgia at
home. They might be able to.
They have a very manageable schedule, so there are some things. But yeah, dude, people are going to get losses. I mean, that Georgia schedule went from this is really hard to this might be the hard. We talked about Florida. This might be the hardest schedule we've ever seen because no one's talking about Missouri. They're sitting there.
Oh, Missouri is right there,
and Missouri's number 6. They look fantastic.
Yeah,
Tennessee looks fantastic, and then obviously you have those games where Ole Miss has looked really good. They haven't played anybody, but they've looked really good. Bama and Texas looks like maybe the best team in the country, and you got to go 3 of those games on the road. So unbelievably now difficult schedule. And also let's talk about Clemson. This team that Georgia made look like an absolute piece of crap. Cade Klubnik sucks. Garrett Riley, their prehistoric offenses, all this stuff. They go drop 66 on App State, who a lot of people thought are going to be the group of 5 team, and Cade Klubnik has 7 touchdowns. So maybe Georgia's defense is just I think
Georgia's defense is really.
We all thought it. We all expected it. Okay, that was a great performance, but maybe it was an even a better performance than we thought originally.
I think that people are going to look up at the end of the year and be reminded of that 2021 defense. That in today's college football, that doesn't exist. I don't think people realize how difficult it is to defend these kind of. Where these crop of players, they didn't play tackle football when they were kids. They played 7-on-7 leagues. So they are so much better in these wide open sets, throwing the football. They're so hard to defend because you have to defend 52 yards, the entire length of the field width-wise. And this Georgia defense can do it all. This Georgia defense is so damn good. I am so excited to see this Georgia defense against Steve Sarkisian's offense. It's going to be one of those great battles where it's strength on strength. I want to talk about one more thing, and it's a storyline that I think, is maybe being forgotten because there's so many things that happen, and most of them are wow, LSU stinks, Alabama stinks, Penn State stinks, Michigan stinks, everybody stinks, is Nebraska might be a good football team. And I want to preface what I'm about to say with, I think we have to stop when I'm about to start. I'm going to be an idiot right here and say, we got to stop treating Colorado as like that's a marquee win, good win over Colorado. They're not going to be it's not a good win anymore. They're a bad football team. They're a 500 football team at best, and they're not going to be anything other than that. But Nebraska handled them like they should handle a 500 football team. They dominated them. Dylan Raiola I don't know why everybody isn't mentioning Dylan Raiola in the same conversations, at least in terms of how good they are as a freshman, as Nico. That's how good he's been. Matt Rule looks like he's not maybe all the way back, but like they could win 9 games this year. Their defense looks good. Nebraska football might be back. I mean, the Cornhuskers are absolutely for real. Are they going to win a national championship? Absolutely not. But could they potentially give Ohio State a run for their money? Yeah. They absolutely could.
Well, and as we just talked about, everyone sucks. Like, I think you can legitimately talk about the Cornhuskers as an outside shot of making the college football playoff. Like, why not them? I mean, what did Penn State do that Nebraska hasn't shown this early in the season? Barely beat Bowling Green? Like, give me a break. Like, all these Big Ten teams outside of USC and Ohio State have looked like absolute dog crap. And Nebraska, you could say, has been the 3rd most impressive team. And I agree. Colorado has no business being mentioned as it was a good win.
It was a good win. But you can't say that anymore. But that doesn't exist.
You can say that they went out there and beat the crap out of the team that was put in front of them, just like we said about Tennessee, right? Like we can start talking about them as a team that belongs in the rankings, that is working their way up. Yep. And listen, Dylan Raiola is a freshman. Like, yeah, we can say, all right, hold your horses. He's not going to win a national championship this year. But in the future, like, why would people not want to come transfers and stuff, want to come play with that guy?
And Matt Rule's offense, they absolutely want to.
And when they see how fired up Lincoln's going to be for this team, Lincoln, Nebraska, talking about, you saw that atmosphere. Yeah. It's one of the best in the country. It's only going to get better as this season goes for those bigger matchups. Those recruits that come to that building, they're going to see one of the best home atmospheres in football. They're going to see Dylan Raiola out there. They're going to see Matt Rule coaching his ass off, and they're going to be happy.
Let me ask you this. Of the teams that disappointed / struggled, sucked, lost, barely escaped, who are you least concerned about? So that would be Michigan, LSU, Bama, Penn State, Notre Dame.
I mean, I think they all have massive concerns. I mean, absolutely. I mean, Michigan, you can wipe them off. They don't even belong in this conversation. Penn State,
least concerned.
I think Penn State's who we thought they were. I mean, I guess if you're talking about a team that's going to lose 2 or 3 games, that's the Penn State Nittany Lions, who they always have been. LSU, I think there's some really, really valid concerns there. They looked terrible against Nicholls State. But I do think you can take some solace that it was a, kind of a letdown spot over USC. I think the least concerned team to me would be Alabama. Like, I still think their performance in week 1 was really good. They ended that game strong. They got the prowess. Jalen Milroe looks good. I still got faith in DeBoer. I think the least concern, I know it's the boring answer, but out of those teams, right, it has to be the Alabama Crimson Tide.
I agree to a certain extent, but I also can see the obvious. Notre Dame has to play nobody. So, I'm going to go with Notre Dame, and they'll be undefeated going into that USC game, fighting for their playoff lives is what I think, because they just don't have to play anybody. Georgia Tech, they fell this past weekend, looked very much Georgia Tech-y against Syracuse. So we'll see. I think Notre Dame is probably the least, but that has more to do with their schedule.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of least concerns making the college football playoff, they're probably got the inside track because of that, but they still got to play USC. And listen, we saw nobody's safe, right? Like Northern Illinois beats you. You can't pencil any wins on that schedule. That wraps up our show. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll be back with you tomorrow.